What is up, guys? Fado82 coming at you with a quick review and some impressions of Rust. This video, guys, is primarily intended for people who haven't played Rust or haven't purchased Rust. So a lot of people ask questions such as, is it worth it? Should I buy it? And I want to talk a little bit about that type of question. So you see that a lot with games, not just early access games, but games that come out in general. A game comes out, forum posts are flooded with those same questions. You know, should I buy it? Is it worth it? And no one can really answer that, guys. Value is subjective. So what I find valuable or what I find enjoyable or worthwhile might not be the same for you. Mileage varies, especially with games and especially with survival games. But let's talk a little bit about what Rust is. Let's start with the elephant in the room and acknowledge that it is an alpha game. It's an early access, and by purchasing Rust, you are paying to be an alpha tester. Now, some people might find that concept really cool. I do. Some people might find that concept a little bit distressing, and that's understandable. But by purchasing it, guys, it's not finished. Things are subject to change. They will change, and they are changing every week. It's an exciting ride, but what is Rust right now? Well, it's an open world survival sandbox game. It has a narrative that is player driven, so there's no NPCs, there's no fetch quests, you're not told what to do. You are plopped into this world, you're naked, you're alone with a rock when you start, and you have to decide how you're going to go about playing the game. It's not a game that's really designed for solo players, guys, so I do want to put that right out there. If you're primarily a lone wolf, you're going to have a difficult time in Rust. And, you know, it's a game that's definitely multiplayer. It's not single player, so that also has to be said. And, you know, it is a really sort of a grand social experiment. Rust is a very interesting game. So players are put into this world. They decide what they're going to make of it. They could build towns. They could build cities. They can play as bandits and go raiding. They can be people who defend against raiders, people who hunt other players down. It's really open to interpretation, and that narrative, guys, that's player driven is really where the magic happens. So if you're someone who needs a constant direction and to be told what to do, and if that's the type of game you really like, a heavily scripted game, Rust is not the game for you. But if you are a player who really likes having things happen very dynamically and sort of in the moment, then Rust is going to be a great experience. Very few games can capture that sort of emergent gameplay that Rust has. It's really quite interesting and really one of the key aspects to Rust. So also, guys, with alpha games, while we're on the subject of that, we just want to talk a little bit about sometimes, you know, alpha developers seem to take the money and run. That's happened with games before. Reign of Kings is a pretty cool game, but they did have a game before it called Starforge, and Starforge was a game that they just stopped working on, and, you know, it really left a bad taste in my mouth and in the mouth of a lot of other players. So is that going to happen with Rust? Who knows? No one has a crystal ball. But what I will say about it is that Gary Newman has his name tied to the game, and I think his reputation is pretty much tied to Rust in some ways, and I think he acknowledges that. And Gary and Facepunch have a really good track record with Gary's mod, and I think it's a really safe bet with Rust, so I don't think that it's as much of a gamble as it is with some other indie developers who kind of come out of nowhere and you really don't have that sort of history or track record. Facepunch and Gary, they have a solid track record, and I have no doubt that they're going to finish Rust and make it a great game. It's already a great game. So guys, with Rust, what are some of the things you do in Rust? You'll spend your time gathering resources, you'll spend your time crafting, you'll spend your time defending against people trying to raid your base, and you might even spend your time raiding. You don't have to raid in Rust, but you will have to defend against raiders. That will be certainly an aspect to it. So if you enjoy crafting games, survival games, and also games that have a heavy player versus player element, then you're probably going to find some value in Rust. Talking about PvP, guys, it is absolutely the core of Rust at this point. You can't really get around it. You're going to have to fight players. They are the greatest threat in the game at this point. There's not a lot of PvE going on. So at this point in time, players are really what are going to be your primary concern. And when you build a base, it's going to be a base that's going to have to be well thought out in terms of having it rated. So you're going to have to build it in that manner. And that really is a key aspect to Rust. Raiding is something, guys, that is part of Rust, and I hope will always be part of Rust. It's a very intense and visceral experience when you're raiding, and also when you're getting raided. Rust, guys, is a game that is unforgiving. So you have to be able to accept loss if you are going to sign up for Rust. In its current state, a lot of servers, a lot of bigger servers do wipe every week, which means your progress is lost. You have to start then from the ground up. That's actually something that is kind of fun, though. You get to try things a different way. It gets too stagnant right now if things just go on for weeks and weeks and there's not a wipe. So with that being said, guys, when you get raided, you do lose everything sometimes, not always. But if you're somebody who's going to get butthurt if you lose a little bit, or you lose some items or lose progression, then Rust is not the game for you. You have to be willing to accept loss. With that, though, with great loss sometimes comes with great highs come great lows, you could say. So with Rust, it's a game where sometimes you're on top of the world. You just maybe raided a base and you get a good score and you're feeling great, and then you get raided and you're feeling kind of down. Rust is a game that really is a very visceral experience. So when you're out there and you're going around and you come across a player and you're getting attacked, you could lose all of what you have on you if you die. So it's not a game where you can respawn and have back your gear or your setup. You do have to be very careful, and every move in Rust is very calculated, and that's really an appealing game. The PvP is intense, guys. It's not like a Call of Duty game where you just hit the respawn button and you're back with your gear. It's much more thought out, much more methodical in the way that players approach it, and that comes with it a certain sense of energy to it, and it's something that really appeals to the people who stick with Rust, and that's something that you want to be aware of. The other thing, guys, to talk about is, the price point of Rust. What is the price point? So Rust is $19.99, about $20 US, and it's not going to go on sale anytime soon. The developers have made that clear, so that's what you'll be investing into it. Personally, from my experience, I've paid $60 for games many times. I've played them for a few days, put them down, never touched them again. For Rust, guys, I got my money's worth while it was still in Legacy, which was the older version of Rust. So for the price of a lap dance at your local gentleman's club, I received about 2,000 hours so far out of Rust. I've played it pretty much. It's the only game I've played for over a year, and it's been a really great experience. So like a lap dance, guys, you might get a happy ending at the end, or you might get an epic case of blue balls. So we're not really sure what will happen with Rust because we don't have a crystal ball, but it's safe to say that with the track record of Face Punch and with the track record of Gary, that he's probably going to give us a happy ending. So I think it's a safe investment. The other aspect, guys, that I just want to talk about with Rust is that it does vary from server to server. So when you're purchasing the game, you have to be aware that there's a lot of different servers to choose from. There's official ones, there's community ones, and the play experience will vary on those servers. Some are modded, some are vanilla, which means they don't have mods, and your experience will vary based on what server you choose to go to. You probably want to choose a server with active admins, and you want to choose a server that has a good community. So guys, I hope this video was helpful. Again, it's primarily intended for new players or for players really who haven't, prospective players who are wondering whether or not they should purchase Rust. I certainly give it my vote of confidence. It's a game that I've enjoyed immensely, and I hope you enjoy the video, guys. Fado82, peace.